Today's video is sponsored by PCBWay. Welcome back to the channel, folks. In today's video, we're doing something a little different than what I would normally do. And while it was fun to undertake this little tinkering task with my old Ender 3 Max Neo, you'll see throughout the course of this video why it may not be the most efficient use of your time, but I'll let you figure that out as it goes along. Sit back, relax, and enjoy today's video. So I just turned it back on, and this does not go to what I thought it went to. My first thought was, why would they hook this fan and the fan for the extruder up to the same thing?
I'm not a smart man.
Only other place I see where that fan could go into would be one of two places. Right here, or they feed into this guy, which also cools all of the components underneath here. With that said, there's only one way to actually find out, and that is to take this guy out of there. Now, I suppose I could go online and do a little bit of research, but where's the fun in that? If you like tinkering, you like tinkering. Let's flip this thing over, plug it in, and see if that cooling fan is no longer turning on when we turn the machine on. Okay, we have success. Only downside is we no longer have cooling fan for the board underneath. But now that I know that this is no longer working, we're going to clip it. I know some of you are screaming at your screens right now. You didn't test that to make sure there was no electricity actually running through it. Nope, I didn't. Mainly because every time you power this thing on, that fan turns on. I unplugged some wires, and now it no longer turns on. Pretty confident that these are no longer live wires. I do want this fan to work though, so I'm going to flip it back over, clip the wires that these came from, put a little hot glue around them so there's no chance at anything going wrong underneath, and then we'll get back to work. So we know the wires that are coming from here obviously power this fan underneath, which can only mean one thing. These wires here, we're feeding our extruder fan. And just to clean it up in here a little bit more, let's get rid of those guys. Applied a little bit of hot glue to those clipped wires just to secure those ends so nothing gets short-circuited or anything like that. Then we can reinstall the wires. You know something, Sam? You might have had a point here.
I really can't say, but yes.
Let's flip this back over, see if what we just did there even makes a difference at all.
No two 3D printing projects are the same. Maybe you need a strong, lightweight nylon or high-temperature resistant PEEK. Maybe it's an ultra-smooth resin model or even flexible TPU for a soft touch part. PCBWay offers all of these services and more, with FDM, SLA, SLS, MJF, and even metal printing options. Whether you're prototyping for a functional design, making a cosplay prop, or designing industrial parts, they have the right material and process to get it done. Upload your file and get an instant quote today at PCBWay.com.
So I printed out this little test block. That's not going to fit there. First thing we need to do, before we can move it down or do any of that stuff, is we need to turn the nozzle temperature up. Now, what temperature are we going to turn it to, you ask?
Hey, nobody cares. Nobody cares.
225. There was a video that I saw a couple months ago by a gentleman named Joel. I will link his channel down in the description below along with the video that he did, where he turned his old Ender into a heat press for these threaded inserts. I thought to myself, is it really necessary to take apart the whole machine? Can we just use the machine as is? Because theoretically, you take that insert there, it'll heat up the brass, right? And press the fitting in. Now I'll caveat this with saying this is not my end goal with this. But before I take everything apart, I just wanted to see if it would actually work. So we are at 227 on the nozzle. Prepare. We're going to move the Z-axis down and get this thing lined up. Now obviously this is not an efficient way of pressing threaded inserts. Since the nozzle can also heat up to 220 degrees, I figured, why not? Let it sit there for a minute. That actually worked fairly well. I don't know why I didn't think that would work. Now obviously this thing is not efficient in the way that it does it, because there's no way to control the depth unless I were to move one of these guys. And then you'd have to change it for each of the things you're pressing in there, but it does work. I suppose the best way to do this would be to look at the number on the screen there, and then just kind of make sure that it's set at that same number. But I've got a few more of these inserts, and this is double-sided. Let's throw that guy in there, raise this up a little bit, and lower ourselves down to that 22.5, 22.3. That works surprisingly well. But then you run into issues like this, where with the manual press, you're really lining up this insert to be perfect. With this, you're kind of relying on the machine to do it for you. And as we saw on the first test, that didn't work so well. And if you had like 100 of these to do, probably wouldn't be the most efficient use of your time. We'll do a couple more. If you have inserts that are bigger than the M5 nuts that I have here, I don't know how well this is going to work. This nozzle is almost sized perfectly for these M5 threaded inserts. Then your hardware just screws into place. Pretty neat. Since the proof of concept is here, figured we probably don't need this because that's a parts cooling fan. We already removed the fan that cooled down our nozzle. Since we don't have any filament that's ever going to go through that again, though, I don't really care. And I've actually got a soldering iron meant for heat press inserts, but I want to see if we can make this a little bit cleaner up here. So I've got another test block that's printing out right now over on the A1 Mini to the left of this machine. While we wait for that to finish up, let's see about getting this guy taken care of and this guy taken care of, because we don't need that, and that's kind of pointless since we're not extruding filament out, right? Make this as clean as we can possibly get it. Now I got to take some measurements of the distance between these two screw holes. 14 millimeters, give or take. And then we can throw these measurements into Shaper. I whipped up a quick design of a soldering iron holder and a bracket that would mount onto this. So because of where the soldering iron has to go, you can imagine it would be quite difficult to actually put screws there because the soldering iron blocks the screws. So I designed a bracket that essentially goes over top of the existing standoffs, I guess I'll call them. And I did a couple different iterations of this simply because the screws originally did not fit. As you can imagine, this screw would stick out too far and it wouldn't actually seat this into place. So the next design I came up with was a little beefier, still slots into place, and I once again tried it with these screws to no success. It ended up coming off just a little bit and was a little bit too wobbly. So what I ended up on was this final version here, which gets secured into place with the same M3 screws, or bolts, whatever you want to call them, that slot into these little heat press inserts. So now this piece is all secured in place, and then the bracket we designed simply holds the soldering iron, and that gets secured into place into these heat press inserts that I pressed in with the soldering iron. Nice and secure in there. Then the soldering iron can slide up through, pulls up into there, and there's another heat press insert in the back side of this. This 12 millimeter M3 bolt will secure into. That guy is in there. Now, I haven't powered this on yet. Admittedly, I did test this out, make sure everything fits, obviously, because we went through a couple different iterations. But aside from this bracket here, which was previously used to hold this motor and these extruder gears so it could be a direct drive printer, this isn't coming off because it's secured through the back there, and I just don't feel like taking it off, quite frankly. But that's in place. I guess the only thing left to do is actually plug this in and plug the machine in and see what happens. So the soldering iron's powered on. It'll take a minute to heat up. There's obviously no probe connected anymore. Well, technically the probe's connected, but it's back here. I'm gonna go into prepare, move, and when it decides to home, technically speaking, this probe should come down. There we go. And we'll let it lower, and I'm just going to activate this when it gets to a certain point. There we go. Machine is homed. Homed. Can go into move the Z. Okay, I see my error. We're going to have to get this as close to the bottom as we can. The more and more I think about this, the stupider it gets. I don't see us needing to go lower than that. It's also a good safety measure, I guess. It won't let us go any lower than that point on the bed. Now that this stupidity is done, one thing we could actually do is disable the homing altogether. For the purposes of this video, I'm not going to do that. We are just going to lift this up and grab ourselves one of our many test blocks. Now I know from experience with these M3 nuts, the hole size we're looking for is going to be a 5mm. I mean, we have a proof of concept here if I wanted to take this any further, I suppose. You can design a 3D printed bracket, print it out, and remove your entire extruder and functionality of your printer if you want to heat press some inserts in there. I guess all this was leading up to this final point. During the process of working on this machine, trying to get it figured out, I ended up printing out a heat press. Assembled it all together, and I've used this little guy to put more than 100 different little M3 inserts into place. And it works really well. The only gripe I have about it is the base is not quite big enough, or it's light enough that it moves around. Let me show you how this one works, because I think this is a far better idea than my little contraption there. And because I printed out the 19mm version of this and not the 17mm, we gotta wrap some tape around this. So this is the Super Serter V1. I will put a link to the gentleman who designed this fancy little product here, in case you want to download it and print it for yourself. Everything you see here fits on one A1 size build plate, so one 256mm build plate will fit all of this stuff minus the soldering iron itself, obviously. This was about $19 on Amazon, and it works a lot better than I figured it would. Super quick. Yeah, this works a lot better than my little contraption. If for whatever reason you want to download that model file and tweak your own ender to become a custom heat press, there will be a link to my Patreon page where you can get both of these models down in the description below. This is sized for a 17mm heat press insert or 17mm soldering iron. I will also tweak one and make it available for the 19mm as well, just in case you have a different size iron. Keeping in mind, when you remove everything from here, you are going to have to manually press that probe or find a way to completely disable the probe and home in when you go into the move sequence. Otherwise, it's going to plunge the thing right into the bed, and that'll damage your bed and probably stink and damage your soldering iron too. So just be careful. If you would like to download the Super Serter, I will also have that link down in the description below. I think I found it on MakerWorld or Printables. Either way, I will link it in the description below. The guy did a really good job on it. You have about 2 inches of clearance underneath the soldering iron itself. This is the 19mm version. He has a 17mm version as well on the files page. And like I said, everything you see here fits on a single 256mm build plate, from the knobs to all the little individual components. This arm here gets attached to the base with a screw that, again, also fits on the same build plate. Now, this was more of a can I get it done versus a should I get it done. The answer is yes and maybe. I don't know that I'd recommend it for you, but it can be done. If you want the model files, again, links are down in the description below. Thank you again to PCBWay for sponsoring today's video. If you're into tinkering like I am, be sure to check them out because they have a whole range of services that you can use to make your projects your own. Thank you guys for sticking with me on this one. I know it was a little bit different than what I normally put out, but I kind of want to start throwing in some stupid projects every now and again, I guess is what I'm going to call this one. I will see you all in the next video, folks. Take care, and I hope you have an awesome day. See ya.